everyone. I just want to talk quickly about one thing I noticed. I was playing Earthbound, or rather Mother 3 via emulator, and suddenly when I switched one of the settings for how the game actually renders in the emulator, I got some weird glitch where basically everything in the game was sped up and there was no audio. And I actually found it to be a very zen experience, mainly because I was near the end of the game and I just needed to basically grind a bunch of battles and enemies just to get my level up so that the final boss fight would be easier and just go over well. Also because apparently there's some final thing you have to do after the boss fight, but before the credits to actually activate the credits. So I just needed to do a rinse and repeat really quickly, and I just by total happenstance found this really cool glitch. And it made me think that, even though it was a glitch, it was basically a feature, honestly. And I started thinking about the future of video games and the future of RPGs. And what it actually reminded me of is earlier in the same series, in the Mother series, Mother 1, they actually had a debug feature where everything increased the world speed times 2, including your movement speeds. And that's what they did instead of sprinting and having a sprint button. And I think that's really interesting because that's a concept that they've literally had in the game in the previous titles, but they just haven't brought it back. And I just happened to find it by total coincidence and accident while messing around with settings. And so I just kind of wanted to go into why does that feel so good? And why is it great to get in this mode where if you're just going to a zen mode, you want it to be fast, you don't care about listening to the same sounds over and over again, about seeing the results screen, you want everything to be as fast as possible. It's almost like you wish you had a fast forward button. So I am not a proponent of taking away control from the player and just turning every game into a movie. But the way that things are going is that games are getting much more accessible. So here's kind of my idea for what I'd like to see RPGs specifically do in the future. So we do have things now. If you play the Nintendo Classic Store, things like save states. Well, I mean, in general, there's a lot of things that do save states, especially on PC. But there are these... there's ways to, instantly, save in a certain instance of a game if you're really in a hard boss battle. And especially on the Nintendo store, if you're playing those classic games, it actually allows you this cool rewind feature. So you can actually rewind frame by frame. And I found that super useful for like old school shooters where you had to jump just at the right time, and even with the rewind feature you'd have to do it 5 or 6 or 7 times because those games were not designed, well, rather they were designed to be lengthy and not designed to be beaten quickly. They were designed to be kind of dragged out, and that was how they would advertise this game has so many hours of content. Even though there might be only 5 levels, it takes you like a stupid amount of time to beat each level because they're just ridiculously hard. And that's of course the leftover from the arcade era of gaming, which the early 90s and early 80s and 90s still clung on to. So what I'd like to see, would I like to see a rewind feature? I mean, it's probably going to be there, but what I would like to see is a kind of dedicated grind mode. I think it could be fine for developers to just kind of acknowledge, hey, there is grinding in games and in our game, and it can be a nice gameplay, style, if you will. Mainly because I think people look down on grinding. They see it as a very time wasting activity on top of just playing a virtual, video game that's not real or whatever. However, I think there is a way to grind correctly and efficiently. So what would grind mode, if I were to turn it on in a game like Final Fantasy, let's say, what would that look like? So first of all, the speed of all the text bosses and everything would go twice as fast. If the battle even auto resolves and you still get the EXP, that would be even better. But let's just say it would go twice as fast and would also allow you to loop in certain music. I mean, actually, think about this. Persona does that, or at least Persona 3, when you are in the dungeon, I'm not sure if it's on all levels, but you can go to, I forget which screen, settings, and you can actually choose 4 or 5 different tracks to play. And so again, that's another acknowledgement that, hey, that's a dungeon crawler, so they know that the entire game is based around grinding, really, and they're trying to just intersperse story and dialogue and everything to make it interesting. But then there are parts in games where you just know that you either, well, in Final Fantasy's case, you have to grind, which I think is a bad game design. But regardless, I think there would be a benefit to having a structured ideology and a system around the actual benefits and psychology of grinding, what works and what doesn't. So one, obviously the frame rate and the speed of the game increases immensely, and that's especially useful in games and RPGs where you have to just click through a bunch of screens saying so and so attacked and whatnot. Number two, there should obviously be an auto attack feature, especially if you're grinding for certain items. God help us. There are certain games where, you have to get this one item from an enemy and it has like a 1% drop rate or something absolutely ridiculous like that. It would be so helpful not only to have an auto resolve, but an auto attack, speed up, loop, some kind of API to Spotify, maybe even would be pretty cool. That's how I grind, at least. That's how I like going about it, because it's I don't know, it's more zen. Sometimes certain gameplay goes with certain music, and the music I was playing at the time, just by coincidence, was like a lo-fi breakcore track, which they usually aren't very lo-fi. Maybe lo-fi is a bit of a stretch, but if you understand, it's I've always found that jungle music or breakcore music, as its close cousin, have always lent itself very closely to the concepts and ideas of video games in general, and the grind kind of mindset that you are essentially transcending the limits of space and time into this mythical realm where your skills, but also your knowledge and insight into the narrative are expanding your consciousness. And I feel that breakcore and I guess lo-fi, by somewhat an extension, definitely fit into that kind of paradigm. So I think it would be cool to have, they already have this on Spotify, but a curated playlist for gamer music. And I think I clicked on it once and it had R&B and hip hop at the very top of the most popular artists. So obviously it's not tailored at all to gaming. It's just whatever else is also popular. A lot of those playlists, you click on, the top whatever, a lot of the songs share the same. I think that at one time they had Drake as the number one on every single playlist, including things from country music to rock and roll. They just slapped Drake on everything. Hopefully that was a contract thing. They're just not that dumb, but in any case, but yeah, I think having a much more, I don't know what's the right word, a much more game focused playlist, preferably made by gamers for gamers. I'm sure something like that exists, but something that I think might have actual research and some kind of cognitive backing behind it, why not only does this go for gamers, but more so, why does this kind of music go with this kind of game and in this specific game mode? And it's kind of like I like to imagine if you're driving a car and you shift gears, you're kind of shifting into a gear where the story, the narrative, you kind of explored all of it or most of it, and now you're just trying to get through a very difficult part of the game. I really do. I'm really iffy about having an ability to essentially cheat the game. You know, if there's a certain boss you just can't get by, because I think there has to be a level of competency involved. I remember this guy talking about his struggles with games, and then specifically Soul-likes, and he was kind of saying, it was really fascinating because I know these people exist, because I see them on the achievements. What I mean is that when you get an achievement, usually for a 360 or PlayStation, so ever since we had achievements, we could see the percentage of people who got it. And what I noticed, I guess a couple years ago, to my shock, is that less than 50% of people actually finish the games they start. I think that's absolutely, frankly, just bizarre. But yeah, there are people who will start games and like enjoy them, and then they just won't finish it. And on top of that, he said, what is the reason for that? And he says, the new game comes out and I want to play that, and I don't finish the old game. And then his example was Alan Wake. I quit Alan Wake halfway, and then of course Alan Wake 2 is coming out. It's like, well, we never finished Alan Wake, so I tried to go back to it, but I couldn't get back into it, and so I had to restart it, and so that wasted more time. And so he said his paradigm around gaming was that it was more entertainment. And I think this is an interesting thing between old gamers, or I'd say old school gamers, and new school gamers, is that old school is used to things being BS, unfair, while new school expects it to be more like entertainment. Like, as soon as the game gets hard or difficult at this part, why would I continue? Why would I persevere? And it's funny that he said what changed him around is watching streamers who are really bad at the game, that were like generally not good players, even worse than the average person. But because the streamer persisted and kept losing, and kept getting better, and eventually overcoming it, he was like, oh, well, if so-and-so can do it, I can do it. And he kind of had this insightful moment where he realized that the perseverance in a task and overcoming something and not having it immediately be easy for you and not just a cinematic experience, he basically said, oh, I get it now. And then he gets why Souls games are popular, and why older games are popular, because it's the perseverance in the game itself. You beat the game on its own terms, and that's the reward. You no longer have to say, oh, I don't get it, or, it isn't for me. It's something where if you push yourself and invest in it, you end up unlocking this feeling that only games can instill, and it's a feeling of accomplishment for sure. But anyway, so I do have hesitations, obviously, recommending systems that would allow people to simply bypass certain things. And again, I think it comes down to the individual at the end of the day. I think the tools for quote-unquote cheating or flexing the game, should be available, but the degree to which they are available, I think, should be somewhat hidden. For example, you're not going to boot up the game and it's going to say, hey, do you want to play on baby mode? I think it should be somewhere either hidden, buried in the options menu, in a place you wouldn't expect to look, So that way the person is like, well, I can't beat immediately, so I'm just going to give up. But then there's a person who does want to beat it, and then he might Google it, and a Google search leads him to, oh, did you know you could do this? And if not, then in the options menu, but maybe there's some secret code online, literally a main menu, up, down, start, a left, right, A, B, start, whatever. And that'll help, them with that problem. And I think those things have always existed to some degree, and I think it really is tailored to how badly that person wants to beat that game. Because I think the people who just give up don't really care about it in the first place. So and there are examples of this. For one example, Signalis, the new version, apparently that has this DLC, for lack of a better word, where in the options menu it has a classic mode and the new mode, and the new mode basically extends your inventory slots from 6 to like 10, I think, which is really funny because that is like of all the horrifying evil monsters who have to fight in Signalis, the most horrifying thing are the inventory slots, because you have one that is always taken up by your flashlight, then your like main gun, and then the ammo for that gun, so that's half of them already, and then you have the rest for like key items. But if you want another weapon, God help you. It's kind of hard actually to imagine or remember. Oh yeah, and if you want to heal, then that's another one. So at most you're gonna have 2 weapons at one time. I'm kind of trying to remember if it actually was 6, because as I'm thinking this through, it sounds actually insane that it's actually 6, but I do remember it being around 6. It can't be 6. No, that's just, I don't know. In any case, anyway, I'm just thinking about the future of what gaming is. I think the optimal point is that we're going to have some kind of universal controller. I mean, we're kind of already there. Every controller is kind of hinting towards the same design. And we're going to have, unfortunately, all streaming, you own nothing system, and you rent a device and it's connected to the internet. And the one good thing is that you'll be able to play anything at any time, any way you want. And it'll be more akin to a Netflix streaming service where you won't have to pay tiers for X or Y game. You'll just have access to everything. And I think in a way that is kind of better in the long run, considering, looking at where things are going. That's the one benefit that I can see, is that, hey, I want to play the Mother series. And the way I played it is I played the original on Nintendo eStore. I have Mother 2 Earthbound on SNES, and then Mother 3 was played via emulator online. So you have all these different places where you're kind of not sure where it's going to work and how it's going to work. And I think, if you have it on a universal system or platform, I think that would be really, really amazing, really powerful. And of course there's, Nintendo copyright and whatever, but I think this is like the eventual place that we're, heading towards. And in that system, of course, you have the ability to take clips and share those clips, download those clips or screenshots, send it to other people, make comments. And it could be anything from Final Fantasy to Earthbound to the latest Call of Duty, for example. And we kind of already see that, with clubs and whatever. I don't really use them, at least on Xbox clubs or whatever for a specific game, but they exist. So the ability to access more things and the ability to share, and the ability, because games already, they take up time. And if you read a lot of future literature about AI and the development of human work ethic, it's kind of like we basically don't do, we do more work, but we do everything more efficiently. And the term of the time is, it's not the big fish that gets the little fish, it's the fast fish that gets the slow fish. And so I think the ability to speed run or to speed through boring sections of a game or sections we've already done I think would be very beneficial and very interesting. I think in combination with the ability to save scrum or fast forward previously read dialogue or things like this, I think would be very, very useful. I think there's already people who, they put shows on in the background, or they skim through shows just to, see it or whatever, see what it's about. And I see the, ability for increased learning. I don't know. I just think everything's going to be like the Matrix training sessions where everything's downloadable in a second. And so my two big things are, lowering the barrier to entry, and not that we're going to shove classic niche games and programs into people's faces, because that usually ruins it once things get popular. Believe me, I know. But I think we should try to lower the barrier of interest to access. If you're interested in a weird niche esoteric Jakartan bootleg video game, that's a rare niche thing. Once you're interested in that, you should be able to access it, I feel. And I'm very much a big proponent of how everything is basically free on the internet. I just think it needs to be more convenient, and I without it being too convenient, I guess. No, and it needs to be conveniently accessible. But it also, it'll open the floodgates to everything, right? Things with like TV shows and stuff. People are going to like what they're going to like, and hopefully they don't like it for the proxy social reasons. They like it simply because their friend told them to like it. I have my own experience recommending shows or TV or games to people, and the worst thing that they can say, it's not that they hate it, is that it's nothing to them. It's average. They just don't jive with what you love. You love this thing, and to them it's just like whatever. But anyway, just thinking aloud about the future of where I'd like things to go and the speed of things to go, and I think the speed and the ability to speed up not only the access process but the information consuming process, I think is really cool and really important. And I think that's it. I'll see you later.